out, but let's talk about culture, and let's talk about what is happening as far as Hindu Astha is concerned. This entire Kaali controversy with the poster, where a director claims creative freedom, and where people are saying, why do you have to hurt religious sentiment for that? And why is it that we always see this happening when they want to explore creative freedom? They find Hindutva as perhaps fertile ground, from M.F. Hussain to now.
Anand, this is among the things that one has seen. I read this article, of two groups: radical woke Marxists and radical Islamists. It's not just Hinduism; they attack Christianity very aggressively and, frankly, nauseatingly in the West. Even if you're not a Christian, you get offended because it's almost like, "Yaar, kya bol rahe ho?" And similarly in India. And what this is doing is creating an unsustainable disequilibrium, in many in democracies in the West and in India, because it's wonderful to look at the works of John Nash. I'm sure you've heard of him, the Nobel laureate, and through game theory, it's spoken of how groups interact with each other, and he said a state of disequilibrium, where a certain side feels treated unfairly, will not sustain, and it will move to a state of equilibrium, which is called Nash equilibrium. Now, if one religious group or a few religious groups are treated with nauseating disrespect, whereas some religious groups are treated with extreme respect or even fear, this is a disequilibrium. It can move only in two directions. Nash equilibrium will be in one of two directions. Either all religions are treated with disrespect, or all religions are treated with equal respect. And you're seeing this play out in India, which is where much of the emotions and controversies come from. If a certain group feels that it's treated unfairly. The primary culprits in this are two groups: radical woke Marxists and radical Islamists. They attack Christianity in the West and Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism in India. And the religions that they favor or fear, which is wokeism or Islam, they will not allow even respectful questioning there. This is, of course, unsustainable. And I must clarify that this is more a thing of radical Islamists and radical woke Marxists. Ordinary leftists or ordinary Muslims actually do practice a two-way street. So ordinary Muslims, to be honest, in India, of course, would not like Allah or Prophet Muhammad to be disrespected, but in turn, they will ensure that they do not disrespect Lord Ram or Lord Shiva or Lord Krishna. So it is a two-way street, which is sustainable, right? The problem is the one-way street that radical woke Marxists and radical Islamists insist upon.
Well, how do you counter this? Because there are people who claim to be Shiv Bhakts, there are people who claim to be Kaali Bhakts or Durga Bhakts, people who claim to be Ram Bhakts, who come out and say, what's wrong if I question Ram? What's wrong if I have gone ahead and said something about Shiva? And then they will continue to push. It's not that they will desist. It's not that they will respect that there are other. They will call the other woke. The othering will start. Right wing, Hindutva forces. Look at the utterances of this film director and what position she is trying to take. So it is her will versus what the sentiment of crores of people is. So now who's right and who's wrong?
Look, like I said, in an ideal world, I frankly, I don't know this film director, so I don't know if she treats only Hinduism with disrespect and treats other religions with respect. I won't know that. Frankly, that is something that if a case has been filed, that's for a court to decide. The key thing that matters, Anand, is the intentions that one speaks with. There is nothing wrong with having a different point of view, and it's not just true of Hinduism. It is there even in Islam and Christianity. Sunni and Shia have actually different interpretations of the same scriptures. Even within Sunnis, the Barelvis, Deobandis have different, the Sufis have different interpretations. Similarly, in Christianity, Roman Catholicism and Protestantism and Greek Orthodox, I mean, they have different interpretations. but each of them approach their scriptures with respect, and you can see that in the intentions, right? So the key thing is about intentions. And ideally, the situation that all democracies have been pushed into by these two groups, radical woke Marxists and radical Islamists, we need to push back against that so that we can go back to what India's natural state is. In India's natural state, we respect all religions, we respect all gods, we'll respect all prophets, but we also question gently, right? As has been said in the Natya Shastra so beautifully, Satyam Bruat, Priyam Bruat, Na Bruat, Satyam Apriyam, that speak the truth, but speak it with love. If you cannot speak it with love, then don't speak it.
Don't
right?
speak.
This is the Indian way. So we will question, but question politely. We never disrespect religions. We don't disrespect gods and prophets, even be it gods and prophets of other religions, which would be the natural Indian way. But this is not possible as till these two groups primarily are injecting poison into democracies, not just in India, but frankly, democracies in the West as well. I should state also that the primary victims of these two groups are their own people. That must be clarified. 80%, global terrorism databases shows it very clearly. More than 80% of the victims of radical Islamic terrorism are actually Muslims. They kill those who they think are Muslims who are not sufficiently pure.
Mushriks or monotheists.
You will see the black book of communism. The primary victims of communism and Marxism are actually their own people. So when we push back against radical Islamism and radical woke Marxism, the primary people we are helping are actually Muslims and leftists. So these two groups are regrettably adding poison with their one-way disrespect. Ganga Jamuna Tahzeeb cannot be one way. It has to be two-way.
I agree, but this is something which has politically been also happening. 50s, 60s, 70s, we saw this entire Periyarism or the Periyar movement under E.V. Ramaswamy Naikar. And there again, it was selective mocking of Hindu traditions, Hindu gods. And that's what happened. Now, like you said, this radical woke Marxism is something which is prevalent across the board. This entire liberal lobby is clinging on or is in the throes of this very thought process. Are you liberal when you turn around and say, what's wrong in questioning Hindu gods, but turning around and say, let's not disrespect Prophet? So a comment by Nupur Sharma, and you have courts and judges trying to justify it and say, justify beheading directly, indirectly, or, however, intentionally or unintentionally. But in this case, there is no umbrage that's been taken. And the same groups that came out and said that, no, how can Nupur Sharma say something like this, are happy saying what's wrong in showing a smoking Kaali.
Rahul, there are many liberals. I call myself a liberal, and I know you. I know even you're a liberal. There are many genuine liberals who are realizing that we need to ensure that liberalism is dissociated clearly from wokeism, because wokeism is not liberal. And liberalism is getting a bad name. In fact, wokeism is almost a religion, an extremist religion. Rahul, Anand, what you're saying is essentially the same thing, that this one-way disrespect is unsustainable because people will get a sense of unfairness towards them and they will react. And my fear is that this will become a negative spiral where there will be comparative intolerance from all sides. And one cannot blame the group that is reacting. It must be, we must handle, in the Ayurvedic way. You don't look at the symptoms, you look at what is the root cause, and if you have to take an Ayurvedic approach to the problems of this comparative intolerance, extremism, almost in some Western countries, it's almost reached a state of a civil war out here. Yeah. And if you have to look at it from an Ayurvedic perspective, then what is the root cause, of this? The answer is very clear. And what I said earlier, that these two groups who follow a one-way street, which is unsustainable. And my fear is that if we don't handle the root cause, we are going into a comparative cycle of intolerance. It will be a negative spiral, and the result will actually not be good. The result will not be in line with our traditional Indian values, because the traditional Indian values did allow for gentle questioning. The traditional Indian values do allow for debate, but the traditional Indian values also prescribe that we must treat all religions, all gods, all prophets with respect. You don't, and of course you can debate, but you don't have to be a boorish, ill-mannered, buffoon while debating. You can do it in a well-mannered, polite way, so that the other person is willing to listen to you.
But how do I correct this in this modern scenario? Because my final question: what's the remedy? How do I ensure that there are not people who try and justify beheadings over a comment, and there are not people who allow brazen disrespect of Hindu Astha under freedom of speech and expression?
Anand, one thing is very clear, that violence cannot and must not be justified under any circumstances. And the full force of the law must be brought down upon them. The religious groups of whichever religion they come from must clearly dissociate from those groups, must bring out interpretations of the scriptures which go against this. The people who who commit these heinous acts must not be given the respect due to the dead of their religions. I'm sure you're aware, the Pakistani terrorists who came to Mumbai, their bodies were not accepted by any Muslim cemetery in Mumbai, because they said they're not Muslims. They refused to accept them. They said, we will not give them Islamic funeral ceremonies. So these things, and this should apply to all religious groups. Violence in this end cannot be justified under any circumstances. But the more important, the equally important thing is, those who have read the scriptures of all religions, of their own religions, must bring out the liberal, positive interpretations which allow for mutual respect, which allow for gentle questioning, which allow for reform and improvement, but without the boorish, ill-mannered approach that the radical woke Marxists and the radical Islamists are indulging in. And we must be alive to the threat of these two groups and what they are doing to all democracies. It's not just in India, in the West as well. They are creating civil war type situations. It is terrible, and it is not in the interest of any religious group. And I will repeat once again, the primary victims of these two groups are their own people. The primary victims of radical Islamists are Muslims. The primary victims of radical woke Marxists are their own leftists.
No, we need to be alive to the problem. I think that's true. And you've really beautifully spelled it out, that you have the radical woke Marxists and the radical Islamists, and they are the ones who will then end up consuming everybody. Thank you very much, Amish. Always a pleasure speaking with you. Namaste. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anand. You take